Back in high school, I went blind temporarily and had to relearn some cane skills that I learned as a kid. Now, for those of you who are not aware of what I mean, you can see a red and white. Many people often mistakenly refer to it as a stick. It's basically a blindness cane that we use as an extension of our bodies, basically, to tell us what's in front of us and what's around us. Now, I went blind temporarily in high school. Couldn't see a thing. For those of you who live in the United States in the eastern sides, New York, Michigan, um, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and any other state that potentially gets very thick fog in the early mornings. Well, when you drive and you can't see anything in front of your face, not even your hand, you have to pull over for several hours. In your mind, take a color palette, turn that fog from white to red, and have that directly in front of your eyes for 2 months. That's basically what happened. I've got more details on a video called My Experience When I Was Blind, so if you want to check that out, you can. Anyway, during that time, I was using my red and white cane to get around. But because it was only temporary, when I got my vision back, I just felt that I am familiar with this place. I don't need my cane anymore. And also, I feel like there's a social stigma in the sense that I can see pretty well for somebody who's partially sighted, but the cane automatically, it just seems to me like a lot of people who see the cane automatically assume that you can't see anything at all, that your blindness is total darkness. There are also other people who, when they see the red and white cane, they see that you're blind, and some people may use that to also condone other negative notions, which I won't go into here. But for those of you who are blind or are on my channel, you know what I'm talking about. But I think the biggest thing is the fact that I can see pretty well, and I've always been to familiar places, and I figure I don't need it. It was this voice in my head telling me that I don't need it, even though, to be honest, I can benefit from it, because I don't have very good depth perception. So I can benefit from it, especially at night, in unfamiliar environments. And I honestly know this, but there's like this subconscious notion that's preventing me from using it. I don't know exactly how to explain it. Same can be said for the computer software here. For instance, this is what the Macintosh provides by default. And you can certainly get along with this. You can get by with this. I have for the last 12 years used magnification like this. Usually on full screen. I don't use the lens mode like this. But you notice how grainy things are, how small the lens is. You can get by, but you can think of this as surviving. Whereas with something like Zoom text, you can see how much better this is, and you can think of it as thriving. The problem is the software costs $400, and for that kind of money, you could get a low-end Windows PC. So again, it's one of those where I know it could benefit me, but if I'm getting along, semi-fine, surviving, if you will, with this kind of magnification, then why spend the extra money? It wasn't until I started using this on a daily basis, which I have been for the last, I think, week, that I realized the benefits of the technology. And I was sitting down, because I'm going to be getting orientation and mobility, a refresher through my state agency, in preparation to enter the workforce. Of course, while they're doing this, I'm doing the usual interviews and so forth. So I'm doing my part, they're doing their part. So their part is technology, which I've already been discussing, which has to do with a new PC and so forth. I've already talked about that. The other is orientation and mobility with the red and white cane. And as I was sitting there, I began to realize that yes, I can benefit from the cane, and I really should start to use it. But for the longest time, I've had this voice in my head saying, you've gotten along fine without it up until now, why do you need to start? perhaps you could say that I'm stubborn, but if you've learned, I guess my school life, I was being taught to live as somebody who was partially sighted, and for good reason. And it has to do with the fact that I did lose my vision in high school, because I was told later on, after it actually happened, my parents were told it was going to happen. So, but they didn't want to scare me. So that's why I went through the training. Obviously, it came in handy. But even afterwards, basically, I was taught in school to quote unquote live life, as you will, as somebody who is blind, whereas at home, I was taught to live as somebody who is sighted. Now, I use my vision as much as I possibly can, but I'm beginning to realize now that maybe, while I certainly can use it for things, there are better ways to do it. But I guess it's just that contradiction that I had through school growing up. Same thing with the video magnifier. Now, the video magnifier is an interesting case because with cameras on everything these days, and there's even software that can take this hardware and replicate its features on an iPhone, for instance. Not necessarily on Android, it's not quite there, but on the iPhone there's definitely something. But here's the problem. We go back to the cameras. If the device has not been seen, if it's not something that most people even know exists, then what's going to happen is a manager could walk up to you and kick you out, and you could end up in a real loophole, as it were, because you have to say, oh, the ADA, have the manager call the office. There was a scenario described to me at a seminar that I was at for a piece of technology a couple weeks ago along these lines, and it basically turned into a big mess. And, so there's that, and there's also, like I said before with the white cane, the stigma of this voice in my head subconsciously telling me that you've gotten along in your familiar environments up until now. Why do you need this kind of thing? And desktop video magnifiers as well. I know that I could honestly benefit from something like this. The problem is, in order to keep the cost down, I would prefer to have something where I would have a desktop video magnifier that could double as a monitor. Unfortunately, I'm the extreme exception in this case, because the bulk of people that are in my situation who have low vision are the baby boomer generation and wouldn't need that kind of technology. As a result, there's very few magnifiers on the market that have this. But this costs several $1,000s. And again, it has to do with, if I've been getting along well, quote unquote, surviving with the technology, with the methods that I've been using, why would I need to spend several $1,000s on something? My monocular, I've had my monocular forever, since high school, and I know that I should carry it with me. In fact, that's the easiest thing to carry because it just wraps around my neck. But I've gotten into the habit of not carrying it, that it just becomes a subconscious thing. Now, here's a question for you guys. Have you been in a situation where somebody tells you that you could honestly benefit from something? And I'm not talking about a TV commercial. I'm not talking about some crazy ad on the internet where it says you need this, etc., etc. I'm talking about something that could truly, honestly benefit you in your everyday life and make things a lot more efficient. And yet at the same time, you've been doing this device or service that can help you accomplish a task. You've been accomplishing the same task using another method, and you've done it for so long, and this new device or service would cost a significant amount of money, as an example, and or you have a voice telling you in your head, you've done it this way for so long, why switch? Has anybody out there been in that situation? Because I'm starting to realize now that there are a lot of things that I could benefit from. I guess you could say I'm getting less stubborn, but as I begin to enter the workforce, I'm taking a step back and realizing that there are some things that I really should be taking advantage of. But has anybody out there been in that situation where you feel that you know, you keep telling yourself, I've done it this way, why do I need to change? Or, yes, I know I could benefit, but it's just so much money or so much work, and I've already done it this way for so long, I'm used to it this way, kind of thing. Has anybody been in that situation? Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.